Hello and welcome to the Permaculture Buying Podcast. My name's Cormac and today we have a conversation about getting into the weeds with sheep. So, Kerry, we're just going to do a round of introductions first there. Kerry, do you want to go first?
Sure, thanks for having me. So I'm Kerry Brown. I run Strong Roots Resources. That is a edible landscape design consulting and education company. We're on family farm. It's been the family since the 1930s. I'm the fourth generation on the land, and we have everything set up here as a permaculture and regenerative demonstration site. We hold regular gatherings, classes, and events of that nature here in, if I didn't mention, in East Tennessee in the Knoxville area.
Great stuff. Matt and Bronwyn?
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here in these mixed company all the way across the world. But we live in the central Colorado Rockies. We're at 6,500 feet. So I am a permaculture designer too and a structural engineer. So we are getting involved in all sorts of regenerative buildings and permaculture practices. We're starting our mixed herd breed, right? So we're like in probably phase 3 of our build out. Like we ran a lot of the animals off when we first got in here so we can rethink the system and bring in animals. We have horses, ducks, geese, large breed guardian dog, and 2 Dorper sheep, a breeding pair. And yeah, we're here to learn and ask questions.
Great stuff. Christopher?
My name is Christopher Nesbitt. My wife Selene and I manage the Maya Mountain Research Farm in San Pedro, Colombia, Toledo district of southern Belize. We manage, we're permaculture practitioners. We manage about 500 species of plants over about 30 acres of farm. We do a little bit of small livestock, sheep right now. We've done pigs in the past. And of course, we do poultry and rabbits. And but we're very excited about sheep. We've had a bunch of them and sold some, and it's been actually pretty good for us.
Can you give us an introduction there, please?
So this sheep presentation, which I kind of played with the title 10 different times, wound up with getting into the weeds with sheep because that's actually what they're about for me. That's what they're going after. We are running Katahdin sheep, which are a meat breed, a hair breed, so they shed. No shearing needed around here in our very hot climate, and we are running these as a means of improving the soil, improving the land, improving the diversity on a rotational basis on land that has been fallow for about 30 years.
And so Christopher, do you want to tell us about your sheep as well?
Yeah, Selene and I got into sheep about 2 years ago because a friend of ours had some sheep that she needed to get rid of because her life situation was changing, and we got into them, and they are primarily, they're Dorpers, although the ram that we have is Dorper crossed with Barbadian black belly sheep, and we have he's like 3/4 Dorper. Dorper's a big South African meat breed. None of our sheep are for wool or for dairy, so we just got into it mostly as a management way to manage a landscape. We have an area that was heavily impacted by cattle about 40 years ago, and it's really difficult to work in there. Nothing wants to grow there, so we're like, well, let's, instead of trying to fight that, let's convert it to grassland and then put in the sheep, and then once the sheep are established, start establishing agroforestry amongst that, because that's our main focus, is agroforestry.
Matt, do you want to explain about your context as well?
Yeah, so up here, Dorpers, there's a lot of them out here because of the Hispanic population, right? So we have some friends, and we went over to their house. They had 24 of them in there, and our little girls picked out 2. So we grabbed a ram and we grabbed a ewe and brought them home, and they're for meat, and they're delicious, right? So like I enjoy sheep, and it was just the next breeding pair. I mean, one of the next animals we're going to bring in. We want to bring in a dairy goat, and sheep is just next. So we're looking at breeding them and growing our herd, but we're doing the mixed herd thing. So we're going to bring in turkeys and probably geese. We're going to run meat birds too, right? So I really want to start using this cycle as a seeding cycle and to control the weeds and the vegetation, right? So you would march your animals, your ruminant animals through there, follow them up with your chickens, seed ahead of them all, right? So I mean, that's really what we're trying to do. We have really good. I mean, our fields or north-facing fields, we have probably at least 5 species of perennial grass. It's constant ground cover, very few weeds. We haven't sprayed it or tilled it or used fertilizers for probably 15 years on it. So we have really good pasture ground, and it's already set up in a silver pasture model. And we've resisted the attempt to build fences throughout all of it, right? But we're going to be doing a management system where we're building a big rainbow fence between, because it's a community homestead that we're at. So we have multiple inputs to our paddock systems, and we want to just bring it all together and have the mixed breed, like the diversity helps the soil microbes, it helps the plants, I mean, and everything else. So our idea is just the mixed herd, homestead herd. And these Dorper sheep are perfect. I mean, they're the hair breeds too. They shed. We don't have to. And there's a big market too. So where we're at, there's actually the restaurants run out of their good mutton before they do anything else.
Wagyu. It's comparable.
Yeah, they consider it the Wagyu beef, is what they told us as far as the Dorper sheep. Like, it's really prized around here. And it fell into our lap, and it was just part of the succession of what we're wanting to do as a homestead.
Great stuff. So, Kerry, do you want to just go over the goals and sort of benefits of rotational grazing?
Certainly. So, like I said, the land had been fallow. There were a lot of areas that were, damaged from vehicular traffic, from just, all kinds of stuff that had been, when parts of the farm were used kind of more as a means of storing vehicles and equipment, things of that nature. There's just a lot of areas that were not even really growing much of anything. Just dinner plate size areas in the field. That's mostly, in some spots, fescue dominated, and then there would just be literally nothing at all, bare ground year round. And I don't know why, in other words, so I determined that it really made sense to put that animal impact back into play. And even after, so we started the sheep in August of 2023. So even when we were really hot, when really nothing out here wants to grow, we were very hot and very dry. Even after one pass of those animals, not even a year, like I said, just one pass of, a few days of animals being in a certain spot. As soon as a little bit of rain returned in the fall, I was seeing cool season grasses and weeds, forbs, and different things starting to show up on some of these bare spots. So that basically told me that the soil was barely alive, and just that return of, some poop, some pee, so basically some carbon, some nitrogen, and some mineral that was being excreted, was starting to wake things up again.
Yeah, guys, feel free to chime in from now on. It's just whatever the conversation goes. So, Matt, if you have any questions, or Christopher, you want to add to that, just shout out there.
Well, one of the things that we've had, so we're dealing with the effects of climate change have arrived. Last year, we had a 5-month drought, which was problematic because the pasture grasses were getting established in some of the areas that they were using. We had a high stocking density at the time, so we had to do cut and carry forage for them. But what was useful for us in particular was that when the fires came, because we had escaped fires that ravaged across Toledo district, over 400 farms were affected or damaged or destroyed by fires, including our farm was hit. And what we found was the pasture actually acted as not so much as a fire break, but it did act as a fire break, but it slowed the movement of the fire so that we could prepare more, and actually kept the fire under control. So the sheep, which their main purpose, honestly, was to take advantage of some land that had been heavily impacted by cattle back in the 1980s and 1970s, had never recovered, because our tropical soils are very heavy clay. The taking advantage of the sheep was to put them in there and take advantage of that space and use that for some kind of yield. And then now that we're getting that established, we've started to seed in different tree legumes to provide shade and nutrition. Crops like mangoes, because sheep eat mangoes, and we'll probably provide more yields. Ultimately, it will be a agro-silvo pastoral system which is integrated with the animals. But the animals are the key to making that work, and so that's where we are.
Animals really are the key. Like this mixed herd that we're doing is just fascinating to me. Like our zone one's right next to our house, so we're interacting with these animals every day, and we want gentle animals, right? So we're going. We have 3 little girls, so we want this attitude with our animals, and we've gotten rid of a lot of the bad animals, and we have these like our horses and our super sweet little fillies, right? And they've set the tone for this thing, and our guardian dog. So like one of the things I want to talk about is like how do we manage all these animals as far as paddock shifts. So like we've added paddocks and dry paddocks, right? Because I like right now it's mud season for us. All the ice is coming off of this fields, right? And whatever impact they've had in the fall is about ready to wake up. So one of the things we did was this year we were following Persephone, right? So it's this magical hour where we get 10 hours of sunlight. So this year we put that on the calendar, and we watched our animals come into heat. So our horses, the sheep, our ducks, like they all came into sheep like on Persephone. So for us, it was like January 29th because our latitude, right, is where that comes from. So the idea is the Darth comes in the fall, November 23rd or whatever, it went down, and then everything wakes back up. So we want to get on these heat cycles of these animals. So with horses, we've learned that they actually want a hard winter, and they have a stronger heat cycle in the spring. So we're working as a vet that's bred a lot of horses, right? So we're trying to time the gestations of horses. So a horse will carry from anywhere from 10 to 12 months, or 10 to 11 months.
It's like
they can actually stop their gestation for a month if they need. But their strongest heat is in the spring, their first heat. So this first heat that they had at Persephone is their strongest heat, the best to get bred. But we don't want to have a baby now, right? So we didn't expose them to stud. We have like a teaser pony out there with the brood mares so that they actually get into a hard heat. So this next heat cycle, we're considering actually breeding the horses, but the sheep are going to be doing it on their own. But like as everything woke up, we had to separate these animals because they were acting all goofy with each other in the yard, right? So the dogs are coming into heat, sheep are coming into heat, and we have this mixed breed. And if we leave them together, like over the winter, and when it was like they weren't acting all weird, but boy, as soon as Persephone heat hit and they had their first real heat, they started acting all weird with each other. So we separated them this spring, and we're looking at how to control these animals and not overgraze our land and not build fences everywhere too, right? So, I mean, we might end up doing the chicken tractor where I can actually loop the fences out. So, I mean, the idea would literally be we broadcast seeds in front of them, move our tractor down one space or one cell, and then put your big ruminants in there, force the seeds into the ground, defecate, bring in down the nutrients, right? And then you would march it up again, and then the back half of it would the birds would clean up it afterwards, right? So you do that 3-day cycle, the and everything else. They clean it up, and then you march it through there. But we have this mixed herd, which makes it much more unique in our way. And our cold climate, like being able to have food for these sheep, like they can't dig. Our horses can go out in the field and dig. Like we save a lot of our pasture through the winter for our horses. They have no problem going out there with those dig. Those sheep, we have to take care of them. They were unable to do that altogether. So for us, it's just managing this thing and growing these herds. Like we want to be able to produce more sheep. We want to be able to produce our own lines of animals, really. I mean, I want trained, nice, docile, domesticated animals. And like we need to bring in a lot of our own breeds. And like a lot of these animals you get are old, we bring them in and they're not very nice. It's amazing. Some of them you can chain and train, but like these sheep, they're not as dumb as they claim, but boy, they're not as smart as the horses. They're not, I mean, they're a lot harder to deal with than some of the more intelligent animals, but we've been researching on the sheep. They are very unique in a lot of ways. Like as far as like, supposedly they don't have any sense of direction, right? You have to lead them to go wherever they're going to go. But we can get, and so I would like to get to where we can have 3, if we can push this we can get 3 babies out of her in 2 years if she has singles, right? And they can have up to triplets. But we thought we were going to have one this fall, but she didn't take in the fall. We thought we were going to have a baby this spring, but she actually didn't take.
She's too young.
Yeah, she was too young when they got given to us, right? So we just came into breeding age at the end of the fall, and they bred, but she didn't take, right? So her heat cycle she didn't take. So we're guessing this first heat cycle, she probably will. So in 145 days or whatever it is, here in 5 months, we'll have our first little baby sheep.
So you mentioned not wanting to use a fence. Kerry, your presentation mentions their fence training and management.
Yeah, so our perimeter fences here are long gone. We used to have them. We used to have 4-strand barbed wire, and a little bit of cross fencing, but that stuff has been it came out a long time ago. So these sheep, in a way, like, I'm fortunate. These sheep came to me already trained to polywire. I am able to run them on 3 strands of polywire, and honestly, I could probably go down to 2. But without the perimeter fencing present, I'm kind of a 3-strand guy. Also, I don't think I mentioned, but we have a donkey as a guardian. LGDs are not a good fit for us right now, so the donkey is their companion and their watchdog, as it were. And she's very good at her job. She's a good fit. She seems very content. So we do, like I said, the 3 strands and step in post. So my equipment consists of about I think I keep about 60 posts, 4 reels that will hold about 1,100 feet of line, and my paddocks are always they're variable. So I've been playing with it a lot. I have found that I do make my paddocks a little bigger than technically I'm supposed to have for the stocking density. Right now I have 34 animals plus Primrose the donkey. If I tighten these animals up too much, Prim doesn't like it. She feels crowded, and she will she doesn't try to get out or anything. She's also well trained to the fence, but she kind of gets we call it, she wants to get the zoomies. She wants to be able to run and literally stretch her legs. So I make my paddocks a little bit bigger, and then I just move with the appropriate amount of frequency. So I kind of, each paddock, because it varies on what there is in there to eat, just various parts of the property have different things available. And I use the fencing as a because I have the flexibility of the step-in post and the polywire. My paddocks will be all kinds of crazy shapes because the land itself is laid out in a very odd way, and there's certain areas where I'm literally skipping somebody's backyard. So like my brother, because I don't think I mentioned, but we're up here with we have me and my wife's cabin, and then my mom and dad live here in another structure, and then my brother. And there's my brother's barn that he operates out of for his business. So there's lots of times where we're, skipping several hundred feet before we can move to the next paddock. So paddocks could be, all kinds of wild shapes. When I was doing this presentation yesterday at this conference that I just came home from, I really did drive home the importance of acclimating those animals. If you're getting them from another site, acclimating them to the polywire as soon as you possibly can, to the absolute hottest, most electrified fence. I am, like I said, I am fortunate in that. And so I know people who run the netting, like the Premier One type netting. I know a few people who manage very small flocks in that manner. I don't care for the stuff. I've done it with chickens. It drives me crazy. It gets tangled, and it's a real pain in the butt. So I've gotten to the point with the step-in post and the polywire where I can set up, like a 1/4 acre paddock in 25 minutes or so if I'm moving pretty fast. So, and we use, because we're kind of all over the place and we're often not anywhere near any electricity, we use the Cormac brand. I think it's a 3.5 joule solar charger. So it's got the panel attached to it. It's just one unit, hang it on a T-post, hook it up. Pretty straightforward.
You just grounding that to the T-posts, or you drowning ground rods every time you move that?
I've got 4-foot ground rods with every T-post. And that is one thing I've kind of played around with. I've pulled a few T-posts and a few ground rods out and relocated them. I've added a few, I've subtracted a few. I will probably end up putting in 2 or 3 more as because we've actually been clearing ground. So we've had a lot of areas that were just brush, absolutely really nothing that the sheep would care to eat. It was almost impenetrable. Those have been getting cleaned out. My brother's been working on that with his machinery. And so I'll have more to do. So we're very heavy clay here, very, very rocky. Not like big slab, fortunately. It's not too hard to drive the post. But it's not uncommon to pull out, fist size and even sometimes basketball sized rocks. We're pretty much on fairly porous limestone. So the ground rod is necessary. We have to have it. The T-post would not be sufficient. And anytime if I feel like I'm having a fencing problem, like if anybody's getting out, I always evaluate the fence first, make sure it's, a fence problem that I need to fix and not just an animal wanting to get out. And a lot of the time it's just a matter of soaking the ground, in the summertime, soaking the ground around that ground rod. So if somebody's new to doing this, they're having an issue with animals not obeying the fence, before you call that animal, make sure your fence is actually not the issue.
So, Christopher,
go ahead.
Sorry, Matt. Christopher, you said you had a few escape sheep there today.
Yeah, we've had a problem. It actually happened a little earlier. We have 4 paddocks that they use. We use a hog fence, hog wire, because it's a fairly it's not a mobile system. We're not going to be able to migrate around. There's only one area we're going to do sheep, and so I think I had a paddock to the back. We've heard jaguar nearby, so what we've done is we've moved them out of that paddock to the paddock that is closer to where my house is. Jaguar usually don't attack during the day, but if it's a weak or a tired or wounded jaguar, that is a risk for small livestock. So we have it there, and unbeknownst to me, apparently there's a hole somewhere in the fence, or a big piece of bamboo or something fell on the fence and knocked it down enough so that at least 4 sheep got out. Because when my wife told me, she said, "Oh, Christopher, there's sheep out," and I said, "Are they on this side of the fence or that side of the fence?" She said, "This side." When I came down there, they were there, but they're in an area where there's nothing much that they can damage, and they seem to be enjoying it a lot. So I'll let them be there for a while, and later on I'll entice them back to the house, out to their house. Yeah.
Yeah, the permanent fence thing is a hard skin, really. The cattle panels have definitely proven to be the most robust fence. Because
I think in the future that we'll probably augment this with electrical wire, because everybody I know has sheep is like, dude, once you try the electrical wire, it makes everything so much easier. But we ended up with a supply of this wire, hog wire, and so we just kind of used that. But I'm beginning to think that electrical wire is the way to go, because you can move it and you can change the parameters and stuff like that. So
I'm going to be doing a little bit of a mixed system, right? So like where we're at, we have like horse panels, bull panels, cattle panels, like our zone 1 fence. We're surrounded by bears and mountain lions. Like we live in a wildlife sanctuary, right? So we have hundreds of heads of elk around us, and we're constantly, predators roam our boundaries constantly. So our fence is a little bit different than that. As far as our perimeter fence is really good. But one of the things I'm thinking about doing out in our field is we have a ridge line where there's a ditch and it's been scoured. We have a lot of irrigation water that comes through in the springtime, and I want to gabby on that up and fence it out for my animals. But I want to make my primary solar charging station there, so I do a high tensile electric band around it, so that when I do my paddocks, I can just click into it, right? So that way I have my hot zone, and it stays hot, it's secure. I can do my new plantings in there. And then whenever I do my paddock loop, I can just tie into that high tensile hotline, and everything would be paralyzed. And I could do my double ground rods because like I've played with these round rods too. It's all about how close you are to the ground, from where you get shocked is how much you feel, right? So I want my electricity in the middle of my strand of wire is really what I want to do too. Because we use electric for the horses. It works awesome for the horses. But we're going to be using it for these other things. But I want to be able to make it easier to where I'm not driving these ground rods all the time. Because if you drive two of them together and daisy chain, they ground so much better than they do if a single ground rod. But that's a major deal because with the horses, if it's not hitting hard, they're not going to respect that.
Yeah.
And then I have one more question for you, Kerry. So in the wintertime, what are you doing with your sheep in the wintertime? Like, I mean, you guys get snow coverage. I mean, your grasses aren't growing as much. Like, what are you doing with your sheep in the wintertime? Because for us, it's a big, I mean, the difference between winter and summer for us is just night and day.
Yeah, so our winters we don't get very much snow. We will get some ice storms. Most of the time we'll get, for us, a lot of snow is 5 or 6 inches. Although we are starting to have these events of, 8+ inches and staying well below freezing for several days in a row. So we're seeing definitely a climate shift around here. But so I've kind of managed these sheep 2 different ways in the winter because like I said, I'm in the process of experimenting, taking notes, and seeing what happens. So the first winter we had them, we put them in a very brushy area. I mean, they could move around. It wasn't, too dense for me to navigate, but it was basically an area full of privet, bush honeysuckle, tree of heaven, like all this invasive, low, non-native stuff that is ultimately on its way out here. And I put them there because we also had a very large amount of mature cedar trees for cover. So that's really what they need here. They won't use shelter. We built one and they didn't care for it. So these sheep have always been on pasture. They lamb in the pasture. They are the opposite of being babied. So we put them in this really brushy area because I didn't want them eating down any because we'll get reemergence of grasses through the wintertime. We'll get warm spells. Things will kind of wake up a little bit, and I didn't want them going back and nipping at stuff and stunting the actual vegetative season when spring comes back. So we did that, and of course they were on hay, and I was also cutting privet all over the farm and taking it to them because they love the stuff. I mean, that's kind of one of the pluses of these sheep is in a lot of ways they eat like goats. You can use them to control brush like goats. So we had them there, and with the fact being that, and it was a large area, so it was almost an acre that I had fenced so that we were not having a buildup of a lot of poop in one area. There's plenty of room for everybody. This year, I tried something a little bit different. I had I had a little more of a budget for hay this time around. So we put them on a pasture close to our cabin, close to water, and, so we could keep an eye on things since we're in the middle of lambing season right now. And there's we definitely have slope here. We have slope everywhere, but we had gentle slope. So we're not going to have a mud bog develop. And of course, there was a little bit of vegetation for them to eat, some broom sedge, which they're not really crazy about, doesn't really offer much nutritional value. And, some fescue, which is actually a really good wintertime forage in this area for these sheep. But what we decided to do was roll out copious amounts of hay. Like I said, I had a hay budget, so we got good quality hay from close by that had lots of seed heads in it. So we rolled these big 3x5, actually 4x5 hay rolls out instead of just feeding in one spot where they are, trampling one area, compacting one area where it gets crowded and And, you know, a lot of people kind of like, well, why are you wasting hay? Well, in my world, that's not wasting hay because we're adding biomass. We're working all that matter, you know, into the soil, you know, building up all that carbon and everything. And so we're basically, this is kind of like a blend of deep mulching plus a certain amount of disturbance to try to wake up and activate the soil in this particular area that has been probably the poorest grass and forward production on the whole farm. Certainly one of the worst. And like I said, it was convenient because it was close by, so we could keep an eye on everybody when the lambs started coming in. And you know, easy. We've got frost-free water supply nearby, so that was helpful when we were having runs of, you know, single-digit temperatures and that sort of thing. And there's two different. It's one pasture, but I divided it into two paddocks. I moved them off of that a couple of weeks ago, and I am already seeing new grass emerge, which normally would not be the case this time of year without that kind of impact. So, so I'm probably going to kind of keep. I mean, I think that's the way I want to go about this, is have that impact where the land needs to be healed. And we will, the idea with these kind of brushy areas that we have throughout the farm, that we're just going to keep getting in there with equipment and clearing it out and basically getting sunlight down to the ground again, which has not been the case in some of these spots. So nothing could really, nothing of any real forage value could grow.
Sorry, I was going to ask, how do the sheep cope in the winter in Belize? But it's not really a problem, is it?
Well, no, we don't have winter so much as we have dry season, which functions the same way winter does in the north. Everything goes into sort of stasis and just holds and waits, and a lot of trees will kick off a lot of their foliage, and the grasses will go down. So instead of having regular green growth, we'll have slower growth of grasses emerging, particularly if they've been chewed back pretty low. So what we do is we do cut and carry forage, and there are different species that we use. The Teutonia diversifolia is one that they like a lot. The Morris alba or mulberry, they also like that foliage. Lucena lucifolia, they will eat that. They like that. The Moringa oleifera, they eat that, and that's actually a super high protein, so they really love that. And then there's a merchant tree species that comes in degraded forest called trumpet tree. It's shucks, I've blanked the name for it. It's an emergent species, and has what big foliage, big leaves, and it's actually what the howler monkeys eat. And so we cut that for them. So just like the challenges that people face in temperate climates, we have a parallel to that in terms of our dry season, when soil moisture is less abundant. And so we do cut and carry forage for part of the year. We did a lot last year because both of the 5 months of drought, which was unprecedented, and then the fire. And at that time we had 25 sheep. Now we're down to 12. We're only managing 12 sheep right now. And while we're probably going to redesign our sheep house to integrate it into a small biogas plant, and then put in a piggery nearby to go into the biogas plant as well. Because we do biogas, but primarily for food waste. And I do feed it some sheep waste now and again, but it's, looking for something that's lower maintenance. Yeah, but so our challenge is just like in a temperate climate, is what to feed them during our dry season.
So here's the next question then. So parasites and ticks, like up where we're at, like when we go hunting in the woods where that's predominantly been sheep ran for a long time, the amount of ticks is ridiculous. Way more. And then parasites too. So, I mean, sheep, they feed closer to the ground. What I understand, you got to move them more, right? Like you're definitely more susceptible with picking up parasites than some of these other animals. So like one of the things we do for ticks, I mean, I don't know if it's healthy or not, but we use sulfur blocks. We learned that with horses. So in the tick season, especially like right now, we make sure that our horses and our animals have sulfur blocks, and that really reduces the amount of ticks that feed on them because of the sulfur in their blood. but other than that, we have not looked into much as far as parasite control. Like, we're trying to get to a place where we have a mix of medicinal plants where these animals can self-medicate when they need to be. And I mean, that diversity, but in the central Colorado Rockies, my plant choices or our plant choices are tiny compared to what you're dealing with in the tropics. But and that's one of the things that's on our concern, is making sure that we keep our fields healthy and keep the parasites down and ticks down.
I can speak to a little bit on the parasite topic, at least, from our region. So in terms of ticks, we have them here. They don't, and well, I should say we have, generally Lone Star ticks are fairly rare. We do have the deer ticks. We have ones we call seed ticks, which are incredibly small. I forget the name of kind of the standard, the most common version. They don't seem to be a problem for ruminants here. However, like the barber pole worm has most definitely been a problem. When we got the initial flock, they were a closed flock. They had been given no medication for many years, were parasite resistant. And after the first couple of weeks of having them, my sheep mentor called me and said, can I bring you 8 more animals? Because the other site that she was going to send them to at the last minute, they couldn't make it happen. And I was like, why not? What the heck? She said, I've had them quarantined for a while. I think we're good. But she's like, there's always a chance that something crazy could happen. After having those animals for a couple of weeks and combining, we're in late August. We're incredibly hot. We've got a heat index of 100 degrees, very, very dry. And I had animals start going down. I had, floppy ears, pale gums, pale eyes, all that stuff. And we initially kind of figured that was the case, that it was going to be barber pole worm. Sent one deceased animal off to the local veterinary college to confirm, although it was weeks before we actually got the actual results. After kind of debating for a little bit, we did decide to medicate everybody we could catch. At this point, 5 animals had died. Because sheep, I'm sure you guys have heard, sheep are either on or off. And by the time they look sick to you, they're darn near dead. So we decided to medicate with Cydectin, which to my knowledge is pretty much the last, pharmaceutical that really works on barber pole worm. Being brand new to sheep, I was kind of freaking out a little bit, because I'm like, man, these animals, am I going to wind up with no sheep at all after all this is said and done? Even though my mentor was like, Kerry, it'll be okay. But it's hard, because like I have dragged 5 dead sheep down into the woods at this point. This is rough. And I come from a medical background. I worked on an ambulance for 15 years. So it's really hard for me to let stuff die. So we medicated. We were unable to catch, I think it was 3 animals. So 3 animals did not get medicated, and those 3 animals are still alive and have had many lambs since then. So we did it the one time, and after that I said, you know what? We're not going to do it again. Whoever lives, lives, because I want to promote that resistance. I don't want medication dependent animals. And so yes, the barber pole worm has a life cycle of about 18 days. And we were able to actually, when the parasite first emerged, we were actually able to keep the sheep off of that land for 6 months. We got through all of summer of 2024 with no issues whatsoever. And we were just as hot, just as dry. All the same potential stressors were in place, but nobody got sick. So I am very, very hopeful that we were able to break that cycle.
Lambing season, what challenges and considerations do you have to make for lambing season?
The answer around here is not much. Again, these animals were that, they came to me as proven mothers. So that was a plus, the original group of ewes that I had. We did not have anybody who had ever rejected a lamb or anything of that nature. So our first lambing season started in mid-January. I think it was January 15th of 2023. We had like a wind chill of 0 and about 8 inches of snow on the ground. Like I said, this is when they were hanging out in this thicket under all these cedar trees. We've got lambs coming out everywhere. Lambs everywhere. And I'm out there in all my, cobbled together gear because we don't usually get that cold. I do not have Colorado scale gear here. I got like double socks and everything. And I was just out there thinking, man, there's no way. Like this is there. I'm gonna come out the next morning, and I'm gonna be sad. No, they come out. They already have this thick coat. The mothers clean them up real quick. It's just remarkable what these Katahdins can do. This breed was developed in Maine, where it's quite a bit colder than we get here. So, and there's many schools of thought. A lot of people, even with these Katahdins, they have everybody in the barn. They lamb in the barn. They're very involved. They're very hands-on. Here, I go check on things. I'm like, oh, we got a new one on the ground. As long as that lamb is up, is getting cleaned off, and is hitting that udder, I make sure they bond. And, at some point before they're a couple of days old, because once they're a couple of days old, I can't catch them. They're way too nimble and I'm not. I grab it just long enough to see if we've got a male or a female so we can document it. And then I'm like, do your thing. So this year we have had 14 lambs born. And we had one stillbirth that was birthed and was still in the amniotic sac. So we've noted which, and that was one of the adult ewes. So that was not one of the yearlings. And don't know what's up with that. She had a healthy ram lamb last year. So we'll monitor. That may mean she may get cold. We'll see. I'll give her another chance, but if it happens again, maybe we've got a genetic issue going on. But yeah, lambing season for us it's fun and games, and it's much less stressful this year than it was that first winter of doing it.
And what about you, Christopher?
Our lambs seem to our ewes seem to lamb throughout the year, so we don't necessarily have a lambing season. In fact, the last bunch of lambs we had were in December while we were in Taiwan for a conference. And when we came back, my compadre, Mr. Alfonso, was like, compadre, you had 3 lambs. So it's like, okay, that's great, So very low maintenance. And I really liked hearing, Kerry, the way you were talking about how you don't spend a lot of time on it, because the person that sold me the sheep gave me this sort of encyclopedic book about how to manage sheep. And it was like, oh my God, if this is the manual, I'm just totally over my head. And the sheep have mostly for the most part, taken care of themselves. Only again, we lock them up at night because of the predator issue, and also and then our house is fairly robust with a combination of sheep wire and rabbit wire to keep the bats out, because we do have vampire bats. And that was one of the things when we were raising pigs. We had vampire bats come in and basically suck a few pigs down till they couldn't make it. They got something from the bats. So we designed it around that.
That makes our cold climate in the Rockies feel good, because that's last cold snap we had. It didn't get above freezing for like 8 days. And at night it was like 0. Was our coldest day this year was -4. But yeah,
wow.
It was rough.
The sheep were fine.
The sheep were fine. They didn't the sheep didn't even act like they cared at all.
Yeah.
And we have like little huts. Like they go in our little hut
calf
though.
huts.
They're like cabbing huts, fiberglass domes. But they go in there. I mean, we don't have any robust structure for them, but we have just something they can get out of the snow and wet with. That's it. But yeah, they handle it just fine.
Well, I think we covered a fair bit. Matt and Bronwyn, is that covered what you need to know? Is there any other question for these 2 guys you have while we have them here?
Well,
Shearing Dorpers?
well, yeah. I
Can
mean,
you shear them for summer?
shear what?
The Dorper sheep for summer.
Share them.
Shear.
Oh, shear them.
Sheared.
Yes. So I'm not sure if our sheep lose their hair. That's one of the questions we were wondering if we had to shave these things. But
Before
No, they're
summer.
short hair sheep. They're tropical sheep, and they don't produce wool.
Okay.
yeah,
They were definitely, they have more wool than they did when we first got them, but they're obviously larger too. So, but yeah, no shearing is good. That's
yeah.
low
We want the
maintenance.
low maintenance. That's exactly what we want. And they just seem like they're pretty docile, easy keepers. Like so. Kerry, why the Katahdin sheep? That's what you ended up with from Maine.
Yeah.
So you're actually eating them, right? So you're butchering these sheep.
Yep. Yeah, we butchered one, a ram that was I think he was about 8 months old. So the current kind of the setup that we have, since I'm running these sheep as part of like a leasing program, and I get to keep my half after next year. We can anytime we decide to harvest, or if I need to sell to drop my stocking density down, we just split it 50-50 with our mentor. So we had 3 rams last year. We sent 2 to another farm just to be processed. And then we processed 1 here because he kept getting out of the fence. And in that case, I've only done small animals at that point. I didn't have a bunch of a skill set in terms of, larger ruminant. So I gave a call to my friends who regularly do deer, and he brought his gear up. We dispatched the animal in the field, which that beats the heck out of trying to catch them and get them into a trailer. That is one thing that has been difficult, like adding the infrastructure for catching animals and all that kind of thing. They're suspicious of the trailer. If we had, because we borrow a livestock trailer, so if we had one up here full time, I would just acclimate them to it more regularly. But going forward, our plan is just to dispatch in the field. And because of the way the meat that goes back to the that we split, basically it goes to it's a private membership association. It's actually considered a ministry under Tennessee state law. So we can process here on the farm, vacuum seal it, pack it all in a cooler, and we take it straight over to the farm store, and it goes into the freezers because it's a buyer's cooperative. So the whole like USDA stuff does not apply in this case. And so we, like I said, we just, we dispatch in the field with a weapon. And it's, I think, probably the very best way of going about it. The animal is literally, living its best life, doing its thing. And then the next second it's done. And we haven't had the stress of transport or anything like that. So.
Yeah, when we dispatch animals, I like doing them when they're calm and cool, right? There's no adrenaline. They're not freaking out. How about you, Christopher? How do you harvest your sheep? Because I mean, we're gamesmen. Like, we hunt and fish and everything else like that. So preserving this meat is going to be a big part of what we're doing, right? Like, and I was just curious if you had any tips on like the cuts of meat and things and how you process it. Because when I do it, yeah, I'm going to do it just like a deer probably. And I think I'm going to get to where I start canning meat. Like, I have a big meat pressure canner. So, I mean, when we get to that point, I really want to start using as much as the animal as I can. As far as I'm going to make bone meal out of it, right? I'm going to collect their blood. I'm going to leather, like where we need it. Like, I really want to get back to those traditional skills. Like, everything we're bringing into our place is organic now. And we really look hard before we import anything. We got to make sure, like, we do import hay. And sometimes I am looking for ones with seeds. Sometimes I'm not, those kind of things. But we really want to make this a closed system, and processing our own animals is part of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the nice part about just doing a few. You guys can do one animal in a day. When we did that ram, like, we weren't in a hurry. We were at it for about 4 or 5 hours. It was November. It was a nice cool day. We didn't have to, be too fast because of flies or anything like that. And same thing, like we set aside the organs, and those are, went to the dog. And I'm going to be looking for somebody who wants hides. I ended up like the offal and the hides and the head, all that went into the compost. We captured the blood that went into the compost, so it did get recycled in that sense. But I certainly want to use more of the animal next time. And I did want to add real quick, we are implementing silvopasture practices out here, and we're going to be doing a class on that coming up on March 2nd. But we're kind of doing, we have a lot of woody species that need to be removed that don't really serve the purpose, so that we can replace with appropriate species as well. So silvopasture, and I do have a fodder tree system that's underway, so that we have that redundancy of when we are very dry, very hot, those trees are still available as a form of feed.
Yeah, so we brought in fodder trees. So we started those plants next, like when we do our next phase of our fields, it's going to be more for the fodders. Like we've been doing food forest systems, fruit trees, and more of that stuff. But we did buy fodder trees from Liberty, Nick Ferguson, or whatever. And so that's going to be a big part of what we want to do. Absolutely. And then the feed. So are you like, have you seeded anything on your property, or you're just, the animal impact is just bringing back the diversity that was there? You're not actually seeding ahead of your sheep besides the hay.
Yeah, I really haven't seeded much of anything. I am, because I'm waiting to see what will reemerge from the seed bank. Because when I was younger, there were actual pasture grasses. There was actually a fair amount of diversity when we were running cows out here. So I expect that those will reemerge when the conditions are right. There are some areas that have, as we have been clearing, I have been seeding. At this time, it's just some annual rye, because we already had it on hand. It was left over from other jobs. And I felt compelled to get something down, but stuff's going to come up for sure. I'm so excited for the warm up. We've had a lot of rain. We're not oversaturated, but the soils are definitely getting the rain that they need. So I'm excited to see what starts popping up as we get closer to spring.
That's great, guys. We're hitting close to an hour now, so we just go quick. Matty, he's happy enough now. He's have everything answered, or is there still more?
Oh, there's always still more. I mean, one of my questions was like, so I mean, this is an advanced hindgut. It's got the ruminant, right? It chews its cud. So these things don't bloat, like high alfalfa legumes. Like these things don't have problems overgrazing, right?
Not to my knowledge. We've never had issues with bloat. The bloat seems to be mostly a processed grain issue. And the only grain and sweet feed my animals get is probably no more than a handful apiece. And that's just to entice them to follow me when we move to a new paddock. So I have heard, like I do have a friend in Middle Tennessee who had issues with St. Croix having some bloat, because those animals originated in Ohio. They came down to Tennessee, big change in forage. They had to treat for bloat. And I believe they were able to use baking soda. They gave baking soda, and it took care of it. So, the animals, as long as they have access to blended forage, they know what's up. They adjust appropriately according to what they need to, their system needs.
So vinegar and baking soda is what you use for bloat?
Yeah.
Make them drink it?
I will occasionally, like when we have a big shift in forage types, like basically when they're coming off of hay and we're going to early spring species that are, very rich and very high in carbs, high in sugars, I will provide just free access to baking soda. And I have also put out, when we first were having the issues with the parasite, before we knew it was a parasite, we wondered if it was more of an issue with the rumen. And I would just put out a separate dish of real apple cider vinegar. So like the Bragg's brand or something like that. There's several out there now. Don't get the stuff from the grocery store. It's not real. Make sure it's got the mother in it, and just give them free access to it. You don't have to try to, force it down the chute or anything like that. Just, you know, if there's a big shift in what they're eating, it might be worth doing, but you guys may not even need to worry about that.
I mean, we do have alfalfa and clover, and we're planting a lot more of it, and even like lupines and stuff like that. So I mean, it's and we're going to get cows again too, and then horses is a big deal with bloat. So keeping this down and understanding that's just part of it. With your mixed herd, that's just what you end up with.
Yeah,
Guys, that's great stuff. Matt and Kerry, these are both in the Designers Telegram group. So I'm sure, Matt, you've got plenty more questions for Kerry. I'll put the links in there, freeze. Christopher, any final thoughts on keeping sheep? Any before we go here?
No, just that it's we're still on a fairly steep learning curve. And I was gonna say we lost in a connection for a little while. We don't actually butcher our sheep here. We sell our sheep live weight and sell them to people, and they go butcher them elsewhere. So it's a little more of a hassle logistically, but it's easier on us, and it's easier on the sheep. Just like there's a sheep there, sheep walks out of the paddock, and then they don't see the sheep again, and we don't see the sheep again. And you know, a lot of our sheep have been because Dorpers are prized, are considered good sheep over the Barbadian black belly sheep, which is also a fine sheep for the lowland humid tropics. But Dorpers are prized because they have they put on more weight and have more meat production for. So mostly we're selling them as live weight, and a lot of them are just bred and then kept. So so yeah, that's what we do. That's our primary market.
Great stuff. And Matt and Bronwyn, any final thoughts? Oh, you're muted.
No, let's get 2025 going. It's exciting to be part of these growing things, right? To have mothers that are going to be having babies. Like, it's an awesome part. And 2025 is going to be a great year.
Great stuff. And Kerry, any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I appreciate talking to you guys. Strongrootsresources@gmail.com. If y'all or anybody in the audience has questions, I'm happy to share everything that I've learned.
Great stuff. And guys, that's been the roundtable, and we'll see you all next week. And thanks to my wonderful guests. Again, it's been a pleasure. Cheers.